Hi there. In this video, I'm going to discuss how in materials for House of the Dragon, we've seen that they're using the incorrect four-legged dragon version of the Targaryen Heraldry, and not the correct two-legged dragon version, because that's what dragons have in this universe. Oh ha ha, the fans are angry that they changed something. No, it's not that they changed something. We're worried that they're just plain sloppy and kinda forgot that this is the incorrect version. Because in spy photos, we've actually also seen them using the two-legged version interchangeably. So we're really worried now, is this not an intentional change, but just an inconsistency? Other possibility, maybe this is meant to show the time shift, and I'll cover this. That it's amazing just how much people are willing to overlook and deflect and not see the real criticism here. It's not that you change something, it's when you break your own rules, and this isn't... For years, people did this with the show. They're not intentionally changing things, they frequently just forget. And it's not even that they don't care that they... Well, I think they must have known that, like, dragons zipping from Dragonstone to the Wall in a single flight, they must have just not cared, but I think that must have occurred to them. Other little things that just, from my work on the online encyclopedia, was one of the admins on the Game of Thrones wiki, more than many people, I've seen all the little mistakes they've made over time. And on your own, you've probably seen little things crop up, and sometimes big things that are just really inconsistent. It's the difference between a change and a mistake. We're not fans complaining about changes, we're complaining about mistakes that are even relative to the TV show itself without reading the books at all. People would call this a mistake. Case in point, Gendry Rivers in Season 8, that after all their claiming, no, we took extra time to make Season 8 and it's going to be perfect, and they made a basic script mistake about, like, what's the name of the official bastard surnames for Gendry, a bastard whose father was from the Stormlands, who used the surname Storm. And maybe you could say, well, he was born in the Crownlands. Bastards in King's Landing use the surname Waters. So he's either Gendry Storm or he's Gendry Waters. Why would he call himself Gendry Rivers? Because he was briefly in the Riverlands for season 2 or so. That there is no real way to explain Gendry Rivers as, hey, just don't think about it. Oh, you're picking at little mistakes. And then you wonder how big mistakes happen. And it's, look at how much people obsess over little details for Star Wars movies or any other project. It's a sign that you're not taking it seriously. And I could even tolerate someone making sweeping changes that are intentional versus you are really phoning this in. By extension, it's like the coffee cup that was on screen in Season 8. There have been other times when there's, like, little mistakes in a long-running TV show and we have a quick laugh. This is below the standard you have set for an Emmy-level TV show. That you simultaneously want us to praise you as the best show ever. We are never wrong. And there's graphite on the ground, like in the Chernobyl thing, that it's a perfect system. There are no mistakes. When there are mistakes happening and it's getting really sloppy and really out of hand. I mean, that one coffee cup thing just came to symbolize that the physical production was falling apart from a logistics standpoint. Things were falling apart. But the writing thing is even... But I even excuse, like, from time to time in a big TV show, you're going to get a random shot with a microphone in it. This just happens. Something in the script is even less excusable. Like Gendry Rivers, that you can't really explain that, and you allegedly spent, I don't know how many months proofreading this, and it still got through. I don't... So, this is not they change something, it's about when they make a mistake. And it's really prominent because it's the logo of the main faction in the prequel, which is also being used as the logo for the TV show itself, the Targaryen sigil. If you're new to this, let me back up and explain how the incorrect Targaryen sigil happened in the first place. It was a mistake that originated in the unaired pilot, which even they acknowledged this is simply a mistake, not a change. That when they first designed heraldry for all these things, there's hundreds of variant ways to draw a lion. They had to pick a specific one from heraldry from other things. There's many ways to draw dragons. And the artist they got to make the Targaryen sigil just didn't know that dragons in this universe have 2 legs instead of 4. Usually in heraldry, dragons have 4 legs plus 2 wings for 6 limbs in all. Wyverns have, like a bat, that their 4 limbs are their wings. Their arms are wings. And then their legs, and their rear legs are normal legs. So they have the body plan of a bat or a bird, and like what's in nature. And George R. R. Martin said, this is the whole point of Game of Thrones, is it's a more grounded, realistic, low fantasy. I wanted something that is a little more plausible that this thing could actually fly. That, other people say, it's magic, but like Smaug the dragon in The Hobbit, that kind of Middle-earth dragon could never realistically fly. It's not supposed to, it's magic. And like Balrogs could fly whether they had wings or not, just because they're like angelic demons. But I'm not going to get into that. That he wanted ones that are vaguely more plausible, that he says most of their body is their wings, so they can have more uplift. They only have 2 legs. It looks like a plausible animal. It looks like a big pterosaur or something. You could kind of make this work. So because the artist didn't realize that, they went all the way through production on the pilot with this incorrect 4-legged version. And really, the Targaryen sigil only pops up once in the entire pilot on Viserys' tunic. He has this big Targaryen sigil on it. They don't really have banners with the Targaryen sigil or anything, it's just that. And what happened was, Elio Garcia got a set visit on Season 1. I'm actually not sure if it was the pilot or Season 1, I think it was the pilot. And Elio Garcia is the co-owner of Westeros.org, the main book fan site, who later went on to co-author with George R. R. Martin the World of Ice and Fire source book. So this is one of the, not just in the fandom, he has published books in this, but that was years later. But this is, everyone acknowledges it's the big hub for the book fandom that Martin himself uses. They invited him to the set, gave him a tour, and he pointed out to Cogman, this is the incorrect sigil. Targaryen sigil has 2 legs on it, because dragons have 2 legs, not 4. And they admitted it. They didn't try to say, oh, well, we're making a change for a visual format. They admitted, this is incorrect. Oops. They just don't, we kind of forgot. Oops, we'll fix it. In and of itself, this isn't a problem. It's translating a text thing into visual format. These problems are bound to crop up. I don't even blame them for that. That just gets a miscommunication. Benioff and Weiss themselves aren't the ones who did it. They should have proofread everything the sigil designer was doing, but I don't blame the sigil designer for not knowing that. Jim Staines, who's a brilliant, brilliant artist, Jim Staines. But okay, he fixed it, made a 2-legged version. All was well. What we think happened is that Viserys' costume was so expensive that they didn't bother remaking it. Either that, or they had already filmed it. We're not really sure. But if you go back to Season 1, and you look at Viserys' tunic, it still uses the incorrect version. Whatever the case, they had promised that everything after that, we will fix this in our official merchandise, on our website, and in future appearances. For a time, they did. The problem is, and this is guesswork, every time you bring in new subcontractors on a long-running TV show for costuming, for the props people who come in and out of the show, who make banners, and particularly the CGI people, because CGI in particular is subcontracted out to different third-party groups that rotate in and out. Pixelmondo's only one of like half a dozen groups. They got inconsistent about it, because every time a new subcontractor came in, someone somewhere would use Viserys' Season 1 costume as a reference. And it snowballed that because someone randomly put in the wrong type of Targaryen banner in Season 2 with 4 legs, the new guy in Season 3 copied that one new guy in Season 4 copied them, but it wasn't the only one they were doing. Like, out of 10 banners, like 1 or 2 would have the 4-legged version. That it wasn't, oh, we ended up using this, it's both were being used intermixed, which was silly, because this is one of your official designs of the major factions. No, they are not interchangeable. This is just sloppy. And it's a sign that, they aren't like Star Wars manages to keep track of its own logos pretty well. Its own fictional logos for in-universe factions. There was no story group. There was no writing staff that they'd go, oh, Brian Cogman's a genius. He's this lore master. He wasn't. He was the one guy who bothered to reread book stuff to sometimes cross-check if he was getting something right or not. Basically, he's the guy that bothered to Google things, and they called him a genius, which in some ways he was compared to how Benioff refused to even, you can Google this and find it out from fan wikis, other things. That, oh, he knows the name of that thing. Anyone with a search engine could do that. But, he was bothering to check. We did not have the infrastructure for this show that we needed when we started out. And we thought, the book fans thought this is going to be the next Lord of the Rings. We're going to, like Lord of the Rings, when the movie started, had that fan infrastructure in place. There were websites, there were literary societies and reference books for years, for literally decades. We didn't have nearly that much infrastructure. Even like the Wheel of Time just started up as a TV show. Wheel of Time started before the A Song of Ice and Fire novels. And they had even better developed fan sites and groups and guidebooks, like by the year 2000. I'm talking before Wikipedia and fan wikis. There were just, HTML fan sites that had put together, fact-checking databases of things about their universe very well. And I honestly think Wheel of Time, at least through the beginning of Game of Thrones, through 2011, there was a more established infrastructure for Wheel of Time than there was for Game of Thrones. And in some ways there still is, because a lot of people gave up on Game of Thrones, the TV show, because they weren't keeping track of it. Why should we? And the book fandom is kind of in a lull. Well, Fire and Blood was a pretty good thing to go through. That gave book fandom something to do in 2018, but getting ahead of myself. Point is, they just plain didn't have someone on staff keeping track of, we're using the wrong things, or no, this is the sigil for that other guy. I don't even know how they'd handle, if a character had a personal sigil. Like how Bloodraven, if they're going to do a Dunk and Egg show, are they going to consistently give Bloodraven his personal heraldry of a white dragon, because he's an albino, he uses a white dragon, or other stuff? They really weren't keeping good track of this. And as you think, wouldn't they delete... It's not something you can draw freehand. The Targaryen sigil. Didn't they have the sense to permanently delete it from their database? How did these new subcontractors keep managing to find the 4-legged version? I think part of it is that they had props that they had built that they didn't want to throw out or didn't bother to repaint. This is a whole question unto itself, which is a mystery to me, and the mind boggles at how this managed to just keep happening. With physical props. With CGI, it's a little easier to understand that some new contractor came in and just copy-pasted it, because the design was everywhere. You could find it online if you Google it. Someone just kept doing that. So I've tried to figure this out, and it's a fool's errand. There is no exact pattern to, are they only 4-legged things in CGI, or are they only 4-legged things from the costumes department, because maybe this is something the costume department is doing. There is no pattern, it's both. We've seen 4- and 2-legged versions that are physical props, and CGI has also intermittently used both. They're a little more consistent when it comes to physical props. The CGI tends to be someone screwing up more. But it's just a mistake that keeps getting compounded, and a mistake people keep making doesn't become reality. It's just a big mistake that's on a large scale. That there's been the argument for Game of Thrones wiki and stuff, well, maybe this is the canon sigil now. It's about creator intent, and the fact is, I don't need to debate this, they openly admitted it's a mistake we keep making. Oops. So no debate there. If you don't make excuses for them they didn't make. They never said, oh, they're interchangeable. When you press them, they'll go, oh yeah, it's a mistake, sorry. Then they keep doing it. So no one has ever offered a counter-argument to this, and it got really embarrassing. I know people are going to yell about this. I hope a lot of the people in the comments aren't going to mock me for this, but this got really insulting by like season 8. Again, the perfect season with Gendry Rivers and all these other little, just regardless of what your plot decisions were, you're making unintentional mistakes. That they would interchangeably use the 2- and 4-legged dragon versions in the same episode. And they tended to be CGI things, like the sails on Daenerys' ships, on her fleet, or the giant Targaryen banner during her big speech in the burned-out ruins of King's Landing. And this became a meme. Thankfully, we are not alone. Like, the good folk of the Reddit Free Folk subforum, we do not kneel. They would post all these memes, and it's the biggest Reddit forum for this. All sorts of joke memes pointing out just side-by-side comparisons of you're using variant sigils in the same episode, and it's a mistake. And it keeps popping up. No, it is not the official version. We've been on you about this since literally the pilot. Don't you send a memo to new CGI people? And the CGI is bad enough. Sometimes it even happens in the physical props. And it was just really embarrassing because it's something they admitted was a mistake and continued to be a mistake through literally the last episode of the series. And this is allegedly an Emmy-level TV show. The next Star Wars. The next Lord of the Rings. This isn't some cheap Sci-Fi Channel cable fantasy show. And you're making a mistake on that level. And had they just used the 4-legged version and stuck with it, I would actually be less offended. It's the fact that they kept flip-flopping back and forth, that new people would come in and accidentally use the 4-legged version over and over again. Now, I'd ask about this. One interesting thing I talk about, like armor. The master armorer on Game of Thrones, since the pilot, is actually coming back for House of the Dragon. Simon Brindle. He's the guy in behind-the-scenes videos who, like, I make all of the Lannister armor suits, because metalworking is different from regular costumes. And a lot of Targaryen armor that we've seen in House of the Dragon has sigils on it, or, like, jewelry things, metalwork things you need to do on other stuff. He would know about this, because he has had to work with the Targaryen sigil for a decade. This is one of the things I would like to ask him, like, if he ever came, when production staff, it's interesting when, like, production staff come to conventions and go, hi, I'm the person who makes props, I'm the music composer, or one of the low-level costumers, just, oh, this is how you make a medieval belt or lacing, or the embroiderer. These are interesting things about how the physical production of this goes. I would love to ask him. There, a Reddit AMA. Simon Brindle, you've been on here forever. How do you keep track of the Targaryen sigil in your armor designs? And why does it keep flip-flopping like that? That's the whole thing. Of they decided to just stop answering our questions. That they were embarrassing questions, so they wouldn't give an answer because there was no good one. They were just sloppy. And HBO managed to sell it to us for a long time that there was chaos behind the scenes. So this is a symptom of bigger problems, that these people really don't know how to run anything. And, a very small and seemingly inconsequential symptom compared to, dear God, stuntmen are accidentally catching on fire and we thought it would be safe. Things like that. Or, no, it is logistically not safe to have 60 horses charging or have people filming in sub-zero temperatures for the long night battle. People almost got frostbite from that. There's a lot of other sloppy things that went on in this. It was just emblematic of that. And if you're watching this video for this long, you're still sticking with me, you're probably one of the people who was infuriated by this. If you're Team Targaryen, no. The fact that they were inconsistent about it is worse than if they simply changed it. Because it's ridiculous, and it's a sign of how flippant they were, that they don't believe in anything. That they were just dashing this off so they could run off and do other stuff. They were never really on board with this. Now we're doing House of the Dragon, which it's the main family. Both factions in the war are rival branches of House Targaryen. They both use Targaryen dragons in their sigils. And it's the logo of the prequel show. That we can't ignore this anymore, that damn it, we don't deserve this shabby treatment. Remember, like, after the season 7 finale, it's by that point, after, like, the Sansa rape and Dorne, people got numb to challenging them anymore on ignoring the books, things that were inconsistent within the show itself. Like the dragon zipping to the wall, that even if the dragons can fly that fast and you establish they can't, you've even more thoroughly established that the Raven network doesn't work that fast. Gendry can't run back to the wall that fast. That they're breaking their own rules, and it's just... I don't know if they didn't know or didn't care in that situation. There's a lot of other things like Gendry Rivers where it's just a mistake that they were not paying attention. So this is about their level of dedication. And in his most recent podcast interview, which I covered, the one with the Dune podcast group, Ryan Condal, their showrunner, said, "All right, Reddit, every time I've made a change, I asked George R. R. Martin about it." So he literally said, "Come at me, bro. Come at me, Reddit, if you have a question about a change I made." And it's, if you've intentionally changed the Targaryen sigil, that is an artistic choice. What I'm worried about is if you just plain forgot, which is what Benioff and Weiss did, that they're frauds who faked their way into it and were not paying attention, which is stunning for like an Emmy-level show. I mean, there's other things like Star Wars, Star Trek. Yeah, they forget things, every little things in any long-running project. This was shameful that you let these guys do this, and so many things they were not taking seriously, and all the while telling us, worship at our altar, we're the best thing ever, this is the definition of perfection. And there's some people who need to put them on a pedestal like that, even now. That's the weirdest thing. People who, even today, 2 years later, militantly insist that season 8 was perfection. There isn't a single flaw in it. There are people like that, and they'd have to be obsessive to keep doing it. And I've seen that in other fandoms. When that kind of thing happens, it's not the show, it's them. That there is something missing in their lives, or something they're hurt about, that they project onto this, like a cult leader. But with a TV show, like I keep saying, I got really burned by like the later seasons of Battlestar Galactica because I put the first 2 seasons on such a pedestal that it was a shock to my system when it didn't turn out to be very good. Like other people are like that, like Lost season 1 or Heroes season 1 was so good that they needed to say this is the best thing ever, blinded themselves to the flaws, and it just got away from them. And it's not about the show itself. It's the things the people, fandom, we project goodness onto other things outside of ourselves. I've seen this in anime fandom, I've seen this in cartoon stuff and sci-fi, that this can do no wrong when the Emperor is naked. That we have built them up so much that people didn't want to see the truth, that these guys have all sorts of flaws, there's chaos behind the scenes, or this is simply a mistake in their heraldry that keeps happening. Why aren't they, getting someone to... I don't think Benioff and Weiss would personally micromanage this. I'm saying, why didn't you yell at the person who was the head of your art department to get their act together? That's all it would take. I'm asking, why didn't you... All right, then, if it's someone else's job, why weren't you leaning on the art department person who was responsible for that? And putting 2 guys in charge with no oversight was not a smart plan. This should have been a group thing. Like, look how many people are working on The Witcher or The Wheel of Time. Like the Lucasfilm story group, there are groups of people, fact-checking things versus... the mind boggles how little they were proofreading this. That's my preamble here. Just how did the variant sigils come about? It was this shameful mistake that came out in season 1 through the season 8 finale itself, and which became yet another one of the fandom's digs at Benioff and Weiss, was the damned 4-legged dragon sigil, which they kept popping up even after they admitted it was a mistake. What happened with House of the Dragon? Well, We first noticed this when we got spy photos from the big tournament set at Aldershot in Surrey, England, prominently showing this huge Targaryen banner with a four-legged dragon. We noticed this during the most recent set of live-action filming in England, which was in September. So we didn't know this back in May, but when they came back to filming in England in September, we went, wow, there's this tournament set, and there's this giant banner, like a fort flag, like it was on top of the tournament set, with a Targaryen four-legged dragon. And then there were other banners around the set that also had it. And we were really confused. Just, oh no, not this shit again. Well, actually, this is where it gets interesting. We got blurry shots for a day or two before that, before we got the big tournament set one. We got these blurry shots of a banner on like a beach set or something of what seemed to be a four-legged dragon, but the lighting was bad, it was blurry. And people actually asked one of the directors about it through Instagram. I was one of them, but I was far from the only one. Like on director Greg Yaitanes, they had this big beach battle set, and he would even post on his Instagram, oh look, the spy photo's out in Daily Mail, notice this. Yes, that is me on set in the spy photo that's published. He's funny, he would admit when he was in spy photos that not ones on Reddit, things that when a newspaper is publishing spy photos, he would remark on, oh yeah, that's me, guess they caught me, but it's just him standing around on a beach set with 100 other people, and they're in the middle of takes. And it didn't really reveal anything, but he was there. But someone zoomed in on one of these and said, that looks like a four-legged dragon, and you're in this shot, and this is your episode, what's going on? And multiple people pointed this out when it was happening live, and he responded, not to me, but to one of the other ones, well, that's just a blurry photo. No, it is not a four-legged dragon. That he wasn't just, oh yeah, it's not a problem. Like, he acted like it was something to avoid. Then a couple of days later, we got the tournament set thing. So everyone that had already been tipped off by this, because he'd responded to the first one, more people noticed. That now we have these detailed, unmistakable images of huge four-legged dragon banners. And we all posted about it in his Instagram comments, his public comments feed. What's going on here? Are you using four-legged dragons? And he's a new director to the franchise. I don't know how to explain this. He acted really coy about it. He playfully and coyly, it was bizarre that he kind of didn't address it head on. He didn't just shut it down. Like, he'd hit like on the comments in the thread on Instagram that said, why is there a four-legged dragon in this? He'd hit like, but not write a response. And then once, and this was the weirdest part, I don't know if you use Instagram, I'm fairly new to it, but when you post an Instagram story, it's like a post that fades after you look at it the first time. So this isn't up there anymore, but multiple other people saw this, including from other fan channels, so it's not just me. Right after fans were freaking out about this, not only did he, hit like on our comments and stuff, he posted an Instagram story thing of that spy photo of the tournament with the banner, and this, like, cartoon dragon that had four legs as a gif dancing around the tournament banner. So he was, like, teasing us about it playfully. But he was coy about it. He acknowledged it, but didn't give a straight answer, as opposed to just saying, hey, it's a four-legged dragon in this. And otherwise, he's been a stand-up guy, so I don't think it was like when Benioff and Weiss would tease us for pointing things out. It's just he was acting coy about it as if something was going to come out later. I don't know how to summarize that well, but do not take my word for it. You don't need to. Other fan channels actually did remark on this at the time. I specifically mean Ashea from History of Westeros podcast. Ashea, on Twitter, she's at Myronese Not, spelled with a K. At Myronese Not, like the plot knot. Ashea is one of the co-hosts of one of the bigger and long-running A Song of Ice and Fire podcasts, History of Westeros podcast. I'm subscribed to them. They're very nice. They're very informative. And they talked about this, she talked about this in their reaction video to the first teaser trailer. I'm going to link that below, because she also remarked about, for some time, the different dragon sigils. And she also brought up that I saw her there in the comment. She was in the comments thread with me and maybe a dozen other people trying to flag down the director and go, what is going on with this four-legged dragon sigil? So he did the same thing. He hit like on her posts too. And she's talking about this in the podcast. She saw the same thing. And she's trying to discuss what the heck is going on with these different sigils that the director was remarking on, that they're different, but not giving us a straight answer. And she'd make a video right away, because this was just us parsing through spy photos that were coming out second week of September, I think. But then, like, the teaser trailer dropped, what was it, October 5th, like a month later. So by the time they got around to 2 or 3 weeks later, she said, in the past month of spy photos, we've been seeing these weird four-legged dragons, and the director remarked on it, and now here's the teaser trailer. That leads into talking about the teaser trailer, that they made a video on that. That's where she talks about it. That's when it really hit us that something weird is going on, even to the casual viewer, that this isn't just blurry spy photos of a tournament. They weren't that blurry. It's very prominently in a teaser trailer, you are showing Daemon holding a Targaryen shield that has 4 legs on it. This isn't just another miscommunication with the props department for like a background prop. This is very prominently, you are having Daemon holding Targaryen sigils like that. And if you look throughout the teaser trailer, it's consistently a 4-legged dragon. You have to freeze frame this, but what we think is the Rhaenyra-Laenor wedding feast. The scene where the Velaryons come in and there's a Velaryon banner on one side of the throne. There's a Targaryen banner on the other side of the throne, very big one. It's also got 4 legs. But this is throughout the trailer, so that really brought it to everyone's attention. On top of that, the trailer ends with a cartoon logo, the designed logo of the Targaryen sigil. It says 2022, dissolves into flames, and there's a 4-legged dragon sigil. Which is weird, because for the past 2 years when they've been promoting this show, since they announced in October 2019, their initial mock-up logo, they always use the 2-legged version of the Targaryen sigil with House of the Dragon. And they're even changing the logo they've been using for the past 2 years. So, what is going on here? Well, digging around has only revealed more inconsistencies, because, well, in some spy photos, we even managed to get a glimpse of their clappers. The things they yell, action, and then clap it and start filming. And in some cases, they very prominently posted pictures of their clappers. The sigil, the logo they have on their clappers is the 4-legged version. So this isn't a miscommunication with whoever made that trailer, is my point. Maybe it's the graphics department. This is so pervasive, it's on their clappers. On the other hand, digging through their copyright databases, back in September of 2020, they updated all of their copyrights. This is a year after this went into production, but still over a year ago. They updated the copyrights for all of their sigil designs a year ago, like Stark sigil, Lannister sigil. You need to periodically update. This is very specifically our lion design. And they renewed the specific copyright for specifically the 2-legged version, not the 4-legged version. What is going on here? More question. I keep repeating it. What is going on here? And the simplest answer, which a lot of people have suggested independently, is maybe this is an in-universe change. Not a mistake, but an intentional change. Even though we're still seeing 2-legged dragons, intermixed with 4-legged dragons. The running theory is that their intention is that Targaryen heraldry changed over time. That this is 200 years ago, 100 years after the conquest. I mean, months ago, like a year ago, we were seriously debating, would any of the heraldry be the same? Like, it's a different historical era. Maybe to distinguish this era, the Stark direwolf will look different. The Lannister lion will be a variant design, just to show it's a different time period. Ultimately, when we saw the teaser trailer, everything looked the same except for the Targaryen sigil. The Stark sigil is exactly the same. The Lannister sigil is exactly the same. Even the Tarly sigil is exactly the same. Nothing changed but this, which is very strange. If they were all different to show that time has passed, fine. Again, I'm not against intentional changes. It's you're using the variant one with 4 legs, which is admitted to be incorrect. Still, what's a quick and easy way to visually indicate that something is a different time period? Well, the Targaryens, at least, have a different heraldry design. So I started suspecting this, others did independently, and even the History of Westeros podcast I mentioned a minute ago, even Ashea, in her summation of this, she pointed out maybe it's different to show that time has passed, to distinguish this prequel era from the later period, but it's an intentional in-universe change. That, it's not, oh, fans are weird. It's, no, that's not a mistake, that's a change. We wouldn't have a problem with that. It's on purpose. And if you think about it, this actually raised my hopes. If you think about it, not only would this not be a mistake that the new prequel is making, it would be an ingenious retcon to address the stupid mistake in Game of Thrones. That best case scenario, and this is admittedly best case scenario, is that this explains why the 4-legged versions kept popping up in Game of Thrones. That they'll have a character say, oh yeah, the 4-legged version is the older design. Sometimes artisans and banner weavers mistakenly use the old version, but we're supposed to be using the new version. That'd be pretty cool. That in-universe they say, oh, that's the old version, we updated it because it doesn't look like a real dragon. That would be hilarious. Like when sports teams update their logos, like NFL football, they don't issue a recall for all of the old hats and jackets that have the logos on them that people buy. They just gradually get replaced. At any rate, that's what we hope they're doing. An ingenious retcon to explain away the stupid mistake in Game of Thrones of switching back and forth to the wrong version inconsistently. Another example just occurred to me. Westworld. Of time-shifting things. In Westworld Season 1, people started to suspect that different scenes were set years apart and being shown out of order, because someone noticed, in the scenes with that one guy, the Westworld Park logo is different. And they started realizing this is a good visual indicator of when they're in the past or when they're in the present day, that's the park logo from 30 years ago. That was a big indicator of the different time periods in Westworld, the different logos. So maybe the logo, the Targaryen sigil during the reign of Viserys, because we see this through Rhaenyra's wedding, will be the old sigil that has 4 legs on it. But by the time the Civil War starts, maybe they'll switch to the 2-legged version, after the time skip to the adult characters at the end of Viserys' reign. Pay attention to if we see Emma Darcy with the 4-legged version, or if we see the younger characters. Like at the tournament we saw the 4-legged version, but that's the beginning of Viserys' reign. And all of this ties back to an earlier issue I made a long video about with regard to heraldry. I've been ranting and raving about the Velaryon heraldry. I made a whole long video about it, that, okay, there's some race casting changes. I actually thought they worked within the storyverse. The thing that I got really angry about was, this is not the book-accurate heraldry. And like I said, I think that makes sense to be more angry about that, because it's not something you made as a conscious adaptation choice like a race change. It's, did you just forget that this isn't what Martin said their sigil looks like? That Martin has said very clearly for 20 years, because this is in databases and interviews that Westeros.org did about the sigils in the late 90s, Martin has said that the Velaryon sigil is a real-life seahorse, not a heraldic seahorse. That if there are heraldry databases and guidebooks that if you skim down to what medieval seahorses in medieval heraldry look like, they used a stylized one that's a mix of horse and fish. And we know which guidebook they tend to use, so I talked about this in the other video, that we could tell, and we were wondering, was this just lazy on their part, that they just looked up what was medieval heraldry for a seahorse and used the half-fish version, just as they looked up, well, what did medieval people draw a dragon like, with 4 legs, even though in Westeros they use a 2-legged version. So I had a whole hour-long video yelling about that, how it was more, again, symbolic of, are you paying attention to little details, because it evidences sloppy things behind the scenes. If you just start going, I don't care about little details, then big details you don't care about. So I was upset about the Velaryon seahorse, but what if the simple explanation in universe that they're going to give is that, oh yeah, the half-fish version is the old Velaryon heraldry, and that they will update it to a new version which is book accurate by the end of Viserys' reign, by the end of Season 1, or maybe Season 2, but that the Targaryen and Velaryon sigils are now in the same place, that this isn't book accurate at the beginning of the show. Maybe they're setting up that they'll shift to something else by the war, like Westworld, to indicate a time shift in universe. And why would the Targaryens and Velaryons, of all the houses in Westeros, have a heraldry update when all the other ones, like the Starks and Lannisters, don't? Because their heraldry is very new. They're Valyrians. They came from Valyria. The Targaryen conquest was only 1 century before the beginning of this TV series. They were isolated in the islands of the Narrow Sea, on Dragonstone and Driftmark. They were there for about 100 years after the Doom, but they didn't consider themselves part of Westeros even then. And in the part of the books about the conquest, in the section of World of Ice and Fire and Fire and Blood about the conquest, it specifically says Valyrians didn't use heraldry and sigils. It just wasn't a thing in their culture. So when the Targaryens and the Velaryons came to mainland Westeros, conquered and united it under Aegon the Conqueror, they had to invent heraldry for the first time. Here's the exact quote from Fire and Blood, the Conquest chapter. Heraldic banners had long been a tradition amongst the lords of Westeros, but such had never been used by the dragon lords of Old Valyria. When Aegon's knights unfurled his great silken battle standard, with a red 3-headed dragon breathing fire upon a black field, the lords took it for a sign that he was now truly one of them, a worthy high king for Westeros. So they had to invent their heraldry only 100 years before the beginning of this TV series. If they're starting with when Viserys became king, then we've seen the tournament celebrating his coronation, that's the year 103 after Conquest. That Viserys is the grandson of Aegon the Conqueror's grandson, Jaehaerys, who ruled for 55 years. So his grandson's grandson 100 years later, that isn't that long, historically speaking, compared to the fact that the Starks and Lannisters and the Martells and everyone else have been using their heraldry designs for thousands of years. Well, people don't know how accurate ancient history is, but well over 1,000 years, at the very least. The Starks have used direwolves, the Lannisters have used lions. It's just their sigil. It has been since the mists of time. Compared to the Targaryens, well, it's just barely 100 years ago. We invented heraldry. It's like this parallel to the out-of-universe thing, that we had a new TV series in Game of Thrones, having never visualized the sigils before, they got it wrong. Maybe in-universe, whoever designed the heraldry for Aegon the Conqueror having never seen a real-life dragon before, got it wrong. You know, like, there's other houses in Westeros that use dragon sigils, like House Vance. And if there was ever, like, a conquest show, you know, like, have someone pointing out, but that's not what real dragons look like. Well, we'd never seen one before. And in Westeros, we always thought they had 4 legs, because, you know, we didn't know what they looked like. So I'm hoping that, and this is best case scenario, obviously, this is our fan hope, and they might not do this, is they have some sort of funny scene where someone points out, we really need to update this heraldry. It's only 100 years old. The Westerosi artist we commissioned to make it had never seen a dragon. Dragons don't have 4 legs. So mark my words, if they eventually make this joke, like by the end of season 1 or beginning of season 2, we really need to update our sigil because it doesn't look normal. It doesn't look real. Another thing is, maybe it would also, on another layer, be meant to reflect an artistic period. That maybe this was not a time period where art was very realistic, but striving for the fanciful. Nothing that ties in with it. This is the Targaryen Golden Age. This is this 80-year reign of peace and prosperity. That Viserys' reign, he inherited a long peace from his grandfather of 50 years, and he ruled for almost 30 years after that. And they said the court was really prosperous, really decadent. The Targaryens were never stronger. That isn't the kind of era that inspires brutal realism in art, you know? So maybe they're intentionally having everything look really fanciful and whimsical in the heraldry design. But as the war progresses, there'll be this in-universe art shift towards realistic things. So we'll have a more realistic looking dragon, a more realistic looking seahorse, as an in-universe art thing. Just as there's different art movements, Art Nouveau, Art Deco, Brutalist, that it might be a different thing. That you can tell the difference between late medieval art and high Middle Ages art. There's a shift in everything. So maybe that's something they're going for, to reflect this is this prosperous era aiming towards the whimsical and fantastical in the arts. And after the war devastates everything, it'll be really grim and realistic. That would be really interesting, and that is possible. Not guaranteed, but it's possible, and I hope it's not just me desperately hoping for that, but this doesn't seem like an accident. The way that the director was playing with it, that something this prominent that they need to copyright, they would notice, and I don't think it's something they did by accident. Then again, that's an argument we used with Benioff and Weiss, that there's no way they could have accidentally said Gendry Rivers. There's too many cross-checks and script checkers to do that, and they did it anyway. So it's either... I don't think this was a casual mistake that we should shrug off. It is either a catastrophically incompetent mistake that how can you make this basic of a mistake? You do not have that many fact-checkers. For like the coffee cup, that it's a small mistake. We're horrified that you let a small mistake happen, that you really don't have the infrastructure in place to notice this. Or it was an intentional change. This is either a really jaw-droppingly, how could you miss this? Not something we can ignore. Or, and I'm leaning towards this one, that it was an intentional thing because they're going to have it change over time in universe, is the running theory. Because the odd thing is, new section here, not only have we seen all these spy photos of 4-legged dragons, that'll be one thing, and particularly in the teaser trailer, we have also seen spy photos of the 2-legged dragon heraldry being used interchangeably. Now, if you follow my channel, there's maybe a dozen or so fan channels or hardcore Reddit contributors who have seen every single spy photo. I mean, I don't know you in the general audience. I've tried to present to you guys all of the ones I have. If you've seen all of my videos, you've probably seen most of them too, but I'm really scrutinizing these things. That more than like a casual news site reporting on House of the Dragon every 2 to 4 weeks, like Screen Rant or Looper, no, I've pretty much seen every available spy photo, yeah, we have seen both versions more or less interchangeably. A particular example is the standard Targaryen infantry that were introduced. I made a whole video about this when they were filming in Cornwall in September, that we never really saw what standard Targaryen infantry looked like. We saw Stark infantry, Lannister infantry, but what does their uniform look like? Because Daenerys doesn't use Targaryen infantry. She uses Unsullied and mercenaries or Dothraki. And they mostly wear red for their heraldry, that they have this interesting design. I made a whole video about it because it was the spy photo of the week was, wow, we're seeing all these new infantry designs. If you zoom in on those, we have very high quality spy photos. Standard Targaryen infantry, their shoulder armor, the pauldrons, have these really prominent two-legged dragon sigils on them. And this isn't a one-off mistake. This is the uniform template, so there's dozens, if not hundreds, of these uniforms for all of these extras. This isn't a one-off mistake. This is a uniform for an entire group of extras and stuntmen playing Targaryen infantry. And again, it's possible that this is due to a miscommunication between art departments. That there's a separate department for the people that make the flags and banners versus Simon Brindle's group that make the armor etchings. Those are two separate groups, the people that make the banners and the people that make the armor. Maybe one got the memo and one didn't. But a mistake on that scale I consider unlikely. That someone would have noticed that this isn't just one little one in isolation, or CGI that someone works on in an office and they only see months later. You can see the physical banners, you can see the armor, lots of it, with all these guys in the battle scenes. So someone must have noticed already. And of course, because we the fans pointed it out. But all of this entire video, this entire long video, which I have been putting off for weeks because, it's long and I wanted to get casting information first. This entire video has been building up to my final point. I said I've seen every major spy photo and scrutinized them. I'm leading up to one final spy photo that is the culmination of all of this. From 6 weeks ago, last week of filming in Spain. Here it is. We got a very clear spy photo of a horse that has both versions of the Targaryen heraldry on it, simultaneously. It has the four-legged version on its blinders, but the two-legged version on its chest. This isn't even a matter of different departments. Well, that's made of metal, maybe someone else made it, or this is CGI. It's the same horse. It's the same horse gear, so the same person probably made both pieces. One is the four-legged version, the one on its chest is the two-legged version. By the way, a good way to tell apart the two versions at a distance, for those of you looking at blurrier spy photos than this is a clear photo, but other times we were able to parse it out because the four-legged version has two loops in the tail, which is easier to see at a distance, while the two-legged version just has one big loop in the tail. So if you're looking at a blurrier photo, sometimes we couldn't see the tiny legs as well, but we could see this is the two-loop version. It has to be the four-legged version. This has one loop in it. It's the two-legged version. Nonetheless, this is a clear spy photo. I didn't even need to resort to that. We have a really clear photo of a horse with both versions of the heraldry on it at the same time. What the heck is going on? Are they truly so sloppy as to use both variants on the same horse by accident made by the same person? This is what really started pushing me towards they're doing something intentional. Like I said, my running theory is that in-universe they're going to update the Targaryen heraldry late in the reign of Viserys. And it'll be a good visual way to differentiate, okay, now that I'm seeing a two-legged version, this is the Emma Darcy adult Rhaenyra era. But if you don't see the two-legged version, it's the Millie Alcock young Rhaenyra era. But like old sports jackets and stuff, like you don't throw out your NFL jacket for something just because they've changed the logo. So like Kingsguard armor with the old logo, you wouldn't throw out expensive good armor just for a new sigil. So you'd see some holdovers from the older stuff blurring into the new era. The real distinction isn't if we see four-legged ones as late as like season 3 or something, that might just be, well, it's old armor. Versus the real test of this is, will we ever see two-legged versions earlier in the reign? And even then, it might be, I think we have some spy photos of Targaryen infantry early in Viserys' reign, but they might have someone point out, here's the Targaryen infantry with the new version of our heraldry. What matters is when the new one is introduced. The key point here that really got me thinking on this, and other people thought this, History of Westeros podcast, please check them out at the end of this. They did a better job than I did. I did a more thorough scrutiny, but just as a quick answer, more succinctly, they came to the same conclusion. I just exhaustively looked at every piece of evidence. But yeah, both of us think it's probably to show internal time skips. That it's both to show, for both things. First, to show this is a prequel era 200 years before Game of Thrones, the sigil looks different, and then to reflect the time skips to older Rhaenyra. That we might see the shift at the end of Season 1. And there will be more than one time skip. The big one is between young Rhaenyra and old Rhaenyra. But then at the funeral scene around episode 7, we've seen spy photos of both young Aemond claiming Vhagar and adult Aemond with an eye patch. And we think that time skip is around episode 8. Obviously, like, it'll be Olivia Cook and Emma Darcy with child actors, because a time skip of like 5 years would age up the children but not the adults. It'll just be, hi, I'm still Emma Darcy, just playing 5 years older, but now my 10-year-old son is now a 15-year-old, so he's played by a teenaged actor instead, that sort of thing. So either after the time skip to adult Rhaenyra or the time skip to teenaged versions of her children, they'll introduce that, this is the new heraldry, we want it to be more realistic. We should never have used 4 legs in the first place. We asked some Westerosi artisan who never saw a dragon before. That's the theory. So as we get more promo pics and preview videos and even new official trailers, always keep an eye out for which specific versions of the Targaryen heraldry appear and with which set of characters based on their time period. The young Rhaenyra, young Alicent group, what does adult Rhaenyra use, and what would Rhaenyra's children be seen with when they're small children and when they're teenagers. This is already long, so I'm splitting off a whole other video I made, which is really a rant about that we, the fans, got duped before, and we really need to be cautious about honeypotting. Honeypotting is our fan term for when they changed something and there wasn't an explanation, we'd make a fan an explanation. They're going to explain that next season, and then they never did. We call it honeypotting because it started with the Talissa is a Lannister honeypot theory and then just grew from there to anytime something weird was happening, like the Sansa rape or Littlefinger's death made no sense. Don't worry, they'll retroactively explain that this was a twist next season, and they never did. And that's what coasted along, that we were in denial, or just our best wishes, that we wanted to think Benioff and Weiss and Cogman were actually trying to adapt this show, when it turns out that after season 3 they were trying to rush it to run off to make movies for Star Wars and stuff. That was the real explanation. So we think of explanations for why things are the way they are, which were what we were hoping to be true rather than what we could prove to be true. The free ride is over. So I am cautious about, is this us honeypotting? That 6 to 10 years ago I would have said, well, assuredly this is because they're setting up an in-universe art shift that'll happen late in season 1. I'm saying I'm giving them the benefit of the doubt that this might be what they're doing, and on the scale they're doing it, and the fact that the director was playing coy about it, as Ashaya also noticed, I get indications that aren't just me reading into it that I think this is meant to be an in-universe art shift. The distinction is, when we had honeypotting theories that didn't work before, we would just drop them when nothing happened the next season, when, like, Littlefinger isn't springing from the grave in season 8, when the Sansa rape or TV Dorn didn't make sense in season 6, Talissa never turned out to be a honeypot spy. People forgot that they were mad about it in the first place. That when Talissa died and season 4 came and went and they never retroactively revealed anything, people forgot they were mad about that change. And like I didn't, the people actually from the book sites were still, we remember you did weird things like dropping Taisha or Lady Stoneheart or all this other stuff without explanation that was incoherent. But the hype fandom just does not have a long memory. If something didn't happen in the season that was currently airing, they'd forget about it. The distinction here is I won't, that if we don't get an explanation for the different heraldry by the end of season 1, we land on them like a ton of bricks. Trust but verify. That we are reasonable people, we've had people take advantage of our trust before, but I'm not going to shy away from those values and be called a toxic fan. That, okay, I think they're doing something. Pay attention to this every time a new trailer comes out or a promo thing, like artwork or insignias on a character's costume even. Which time period is using the two-legged version? Be on the lookout for that.